I see the pattern. I feel the reaction. I pause. But somehow, I still become the same person. Take a walk with me. Last episode, we talked about awareness. The ability to see what's happening in real time. The observer. To catch the moment before the pattern takes over. Now that leads us to a deeper question. If you can see the pattern, why do you keep becoming it? Because awareness shows you what's happening. But identity determines who you become when it happens. And most people have never actually questioned that. On the map, identity is the blueprint. It's the internal set of rules that quietly decide what you believe you're capable of, what you allow yourself to have, how you respond under pressure, and who you become without thinking. It's not something you turn on. It's something you operate from. And if you really want to understand identity, you don't have to look any further than the environments that are built to shape it. One of the best ones I've lived inside was on September 19th, 2005. I joined the United States Marine Corps. And what happens there is a masterclass in identity transformation. No one does it better. The moment you step onto those yellow footprints and you see those drill instructors standing there menacingly, the stripping process begins. You lose the clothes, you lose the hairstyle, you lose the visual markers of your old life. Everyone looks the same, moves the same, speaks the same. What happens when that occurs is your ego begins to recede. Not because it's destroyed, but because it's no longer needed in the same way. Then comes the pressure, the sleep deprivation, the physical exhaustion, the mental stress. It's not done randomly, but intentionally. Because when your system is overwhelmed and exhausted, your psychological defenses become more flexible, more programmable. And after a few weeks, the deconstruction is complete. And then something powerful happens. Reconstruction. Shared hardship creates cohesion. When you suffer together, you bond in a way that makes the group feel more important than the individual, than self. Also, if one person shits the bed and messes up, everyone pays. Through drill and ceremony, you don't just act together. You begin to feel like a single organism, moving as one unit. Not as a group of individuals, but something unified. And then comes the final shift, your moral framework. Because war requires a different identity than civilian life. We speak of honor, courage, commitment. These aren't just values. They become who you are. And with that comes purpose. A sense that your life is part of something bigger. And that purpose becomes your armor. People think the military destroys and crushes identity. I don't believe that. I believe it subordinates it. Your personal self still exists, but it's placed in a service of something greater. A collective organism designed for a high-stakes function. But what happens when you leave that environment? For me, it was an identity crisis that lasted well over a decade. Alcohol addiction, drugs, violence, hurting people physically, verbally, people that I claim to love, high-risk behavior that could have killed me, my friends, some situations where I shouldn't have survived. All of these were a sign of help. I didn't realize what I was asking for was rarely talked about. I didn't know better. Now when it's talked about, it's often glazed over, displaced, and retitled so that society can say, we do talk about it, and then move on. But when you leave something like that, you don't just lose a role. You lose the version of yourself that was built to survive inside it. And so we keep the armor on, not because there's still a war, but because we've forgotten how to breathe without the weight of it. I used to call it strength, but it's actually just a blueprint that has outlived its environment. Let's bring this into your reality, because this isn't just the military. This pattern is everywhere. Sports teams, corporations, institutions. Any system that needs peak performance under pressure will shape identity. You hear it in the language. You heard next man up. The system matters more than the individual. In corporate environments, you hear the internal language, the shared codes, the cultural alignment. If you don't speak it, you don't belong. Companies like Apple or Tesla don't just offer jobs. In their offers, they call it, it's a calling. They offer identity, purpose, belonging. And over time, the line between who you are and what you do disappears. From my perspective, this is an evolutionary hack. We're wired for belonging because for most of human history, being alone meant death. So we attach to groups, to systems, to political parties, to identities. And when it works, it creates something powerful. Flow, unity, a collective strength. But the risk always comes after. Because when you leave those environments, you don't just lose a title. You lose yourself. That creates a vacuum. And most people don't know how to fill it. After years of wrestling with this, therapy, relapse, therapy, mentors, experience, I realized something. If the process of getting to a goal requires you to lose yourself, then the goal itself becomes corrupted. You cannot build something healthy using methods that disconnect you from who you are. I want you to stop walking for a second and look at the role you're currently playing. If the system you belong to, your job, your relationship, your social circle disappeared tomorrow, who would be left standing in the aftermath? If your answer only exists inside a title or a role, then you aren't living your life. You're maintaining a blueprint that was handed to you. I believe this is where we are right now as a society. We are dealing with a kind of moral injury that's too heavy to ignore. Because we built systems that prioritize outcomes over the individual, profit over people. So this is where it comes back to you. Identity isn't something you find. It's something that's been shaped over time by everything you've been a part of. And if you never question it, you will spend your life living out a version of yourself that was built for a different environment. So here's your exercise for this walk. The blueprint audit. Pick one area where you feel stuck. Maybe it's your career, maybe it's your personal life, how you show up at home. Ask yourself these 3 questions. Who am I required to be in this room? Am I the fixer? Am I the strong one? Am I the victim? When did I first learn that this role kept me safe? Now, does this version of me even exist anymore? Or am I just ghostwriting for a ghost? Don't try to change it yet. Just name the role, because you can't renovate a house until you see the structure in the blueprint. The next layer, because once identity sets the blueprint, something has to interpret it. Interpret reality through it. That's your mind. The next episode, we're going to break down how your thoughts, conscious, subconscious, aren't random. They're filtered through who you believe you are. Now, I understand how uncomfortable it is to step outside of an identity that once gave you certainty. Because when you leave it, you lose the structure. But that's also where something so important begins. And that is reclaiming your agency. The ability to define your own path instead of inheriting one. Because you can't change your life until you understand the version of you creating it. If this resonated with you, stay walking with me. And let's keep walking together. My name is Gio, and as always, thank you for the company. This one was a rough one.